Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Bold and the Biblical, where the questions are bold and the answers are biblical. I am your host, Christian Barahona, and will be joined by my co host, Ulises Galvez, as we answer controversial topics with nothing but scripture. This is our first episode, uploaded about a month late, but we wanted to plan every single detail out to make sure that we'd give our listeners the content that they deserve to hear. This episode, Ulises and I will be joined by his lovely wife and MAsters University student, Mona Galvez, along with fellow servants of Christ, Andrew, and his wife, Jay Limon. This wonderful couple have actually been blessed with a beautiful baby who is on the way, so please, if you can at any time during the show, before or after, simply pray for this family that is gaining a brand new member, baby Ruth. We love you guys and our prayers are with you. Now, without further ado, here's episode 1 of The Bold and the Biblical. First question. This is asked by a local listener named Mercy Galvez. So if a pregnant woman is in labor and the woman is going to die in labor, would you kill the baby? Would you abort the baby? Like, the only way to save this woman is if you abort the baby. What would you do? Like, what was the right thing to do?
Go ahead, Andrew. I thought I heard this question. Was this one of the questions? I've heard this question before, I feel like. But I guess that's a really unique question.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's I feel like there's not a right or wrong answer as far as where the couple stands.
Mm-hmm.
That life for a life. I mean, I don't think they're biblically. I don't think they would be wrong. It depends on if my wife and I were in that situation. I think it would be a conversation that we would have to have if we could.
Yeah.
If and as the Lord leads us as a couple, I don't know. Well, what are your thoughts on that, Uli?
I think the way I answered it the last time, I know you kind of mentioned that we talked about it before, is that there's this idea. It's not a biblical idea, but it's more of a medical side of it. It's called infanticide. I don't know if you guys heard of that before. Where when the mother's... Okay, before I actually preface that, I'm going to preface it with something saying that obviously if the woman has a condition that the baby is endangering her life, you would think that the mother would prayerfully go and get more than maybe even 1, 2, 3, 4 doctors to counsel her to actually see if this is true, because the science of even diagnosing that is not 100% sure. So like Andrew said, it's not really right and wrong, because if the infanticide, what it actually teaches is that it would be like self-defense for the mother. If the baby's going to kill her, she could actually, again, prayerfully abort the child to save her own life. But it wouldn't be, something wrong if she decides, well, I'm going to sacrifice my life for the child. So, like Andrew was saying, there's no right and wrong. There's just, within that family, prayerfully counseling and
But as the husband, wouldn't you want to take care of your wife and put her before the child?
If I can interject, actually, I think this is kind of touches home for me, because I'm having a baby in a couple months.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I think for my wife and I think that conversation may look like trusting the Lord and trying to deliver the baby, and I think that's how we would approach it. As a married couple, I would like to think that trying to trust the Lord, that the Lord can save both of their lives, but I wouldn't protest against another family who may want to play it on the safer side and save either life. But I do agree, as a husband, I actually had a conversation with a brother about this at Calvary Chapel, and how for him, to lose his wife, he says, for his conscience, he says, and I'm not, don't take this, I guess, at face value, but he says, I can't replace my wife. We can have a lot more kids. And that sounds kind of dark, but I understand what he's saying as his partner is going through whatever pain, and so I would agree with him. I agree, but at the same time, for us, I think that conversation will look like trusting the Lord and trying to have a baby. I hope that helps.
And then I think ultimately, just because it all falls into what you're saying, Andrew, is that in the Lord's sovereignty in each of our lives, I think whatever we decide, God's in the midst of those decisions, because I believe in a Christian's life, He's orchestrating those things, even the minutiaes that are like simple to like the big questions, like what we're dealing right now, what we're talking about now. But there's an implication out of 2 Samuel chapter 12. If you guys remember the story of obviously David falling into adultery with Bathsheba, she gets pregnant. All the story, he murders the husband, and then God casts judgment, which kind of like what we're talking about, we would think of it as dark. God casts judgment on David and says, you're going to lose that child. In God's sovereign purposes, He says, I'm going to take this child from you. And then I remember in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 21, it says, this is after the child was, he had been praying for the child, he had been fasting for the child to live, although God had already told him that the baby wasn't going to live. He says, his servant said to him, what is this that you have done? While the child was still alive, you fasted and wept. Once the child was dead, you got up and you ate food. And they have an exclamation point, so they're like, how did you just get up and just start eating after you found out the child was dead? And then he replied, while the child was still alive, I fasted and wept because I thought perhaps the Lord will show pity on the child and the child will live. The Lord will show pity on the child, not on the mother, not on the father, but on the child. It says, but now he's dead, why should I fast? Am I able to bring him back to this point? And the point of this is kind of like, in the midst of all this, there's still hope. He says, I will go to him, but he cannot return to me. Meaning that this child, you can make an argument there that even the aborted child, if you decide to do that, really hard decision to make, is that child will still be go right into the presence of the Lord. So even if these families have to make this kind of decision, I think in the bigger scheme of things and God's eternal purpose for all of it, He actually just welcomes that child right into His presence.
Okay.
And I think this goes without saying, but just to be clear, and whoever's hearing this, I know Uli would agree with this, and we would all around the table would agree with this. We're specifically talking about this event that you illustrated for us. We're not saying if you start getting hiccups while you're pregnant, give you any reason to get an abortion.
Or in the other sense, like what doctors tell people today, it's like, oh, you're diagnosed, you're gonna have a child that's Down syndrome. 110% you should have that child.
Yeah.
There is zero reason for you to abort that child. I think in a Christian's life, if you even begin to think about aborting a child that's Down syndrome or has any kind of disability, that's definitely ultimately sin.
Yeah.
And it's yeah.
So now, since we're already in the medical kind of questions, what does the Bible say about putting faith in doctors and not Christ? Should I refuse medical care? Is my illness just another test of faith and trusting that God will deliver me from this illness? If God can heal so many Christians who use that healing as their testimony, why can't God do the same for me? Or is that just stubbornness?